All right, welcome back here on the Good Morning Artesia radio show. And joining us now is Mayor Raye Miller. Good morning, Mayor.
Morning.
Hope you're doing well today.
Oh, just fine.
Yeah. And, I did want to ask you about this. It's a lot of work's been going in to bring the Tunnel to Towers 9/11 Never Forget mobile exhibit into Artesia. Artesia's getting a little bit of recognition around the area and around the state for hosting that exhibit.
Yeah, it should actually be, not only good for our community, but folks who are interested in coming to see it. I don't believe it's anywhere else in the state or in West Texas.
Right.
As a result, we should have some out-of-town folks actually come in to actually see that. So should be a really good event, and it was a shame that they figured out that the location right there by Kiff and Kim wasn't going to work, but it was really nice that the schools would allow them to actually use the Bulldog Bowl parking lots, so that should work out really well. In fact, if we have large crowds, it'll work out better just because the amount of parking in and around that area will actually make it a lot easier than what it would have been in the downtown area.
Sure. The only thing is you got to make sure and try one of Rob's. He came up with a sandwich just for this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
The American Hero. So I'll have to try one.
And these type of events are really good for our community because they do bring folks, and, many times they'll eat meals here, and then some of them may even spend the night and do a little sightseeing. So it's a good thing all the way around.
Yeah, so that'll be it'll be rolling into town tomorrow, and then Friday through Monday it'll be on display at the Bulldog Bowl. Council met last night, and you've got a 2-page agenda there, but that's normal.
Yeah, well, the pages were longer than the meat of the session almost. It was a good evening. I mean, we had all 8 counselors there, had a good lively discussion at times, but, there really wasn't a lot of important topics on our agenda. We started off with the approval of the Red Dirt Black Gold Festival, which occurs on August 27th through Sunday, August 29th. But thankfully, events like that are back on the schedule after a year of not having many events, and so that was good. Probably the highlight of our evening was actually the recognition of former Mayor Pro Tem Louis Flores for his service previously on the council.
Mm-hmm.
He went off last year in March, and of course, normally we would have recognized him and the other counselors just shortly thereafter. Well, with COVID, it's pretty hard to do a virtual recognition, but Louis and his wife were able to join us last night, and it was good to see him, and he's been a real valuable asset both in our community in many ways over the years, and continues to be. So, no, that, like I say, that was probably the most exciting thing for the entire evening.
Well, he's on the school board now, I believe. So
yeah, it's a thing where he's served in many areas, and I know he's very active with his church and stuff, and that's the beauty of Artesia, the amount of folks that have multiple areas that they serve in and contribute their time, and our social fabric of this community is just tremendous. I've told folks that if you wanted to run for election, all you need to do is just go from the Little League parks to the softball parks, because basically you can shake 60% of all of the voters' hands in making the trail through that any afternoon or evening.
Yep.
Because everybody's there either to see their own child, their grandchild, their nephew, their niece, their friend, their relative. I mean, it's incredible as to how many folks you actually see when you're out there. And of course, I've got a couple of grandkids playing, in fact, one in Little League and 2 in softball, and so as a result, I get to be out there a lot, and it's great. You see everybody in town, but that's what's nice about a small community like ours. In fact, I think your announcement about the Friday afternoon baseball game with Goddard at 4:30 is probably the most exciting thing, or more exciting than anything we did last night, because that should be a really good game, and hopefully the Bulldogs do well.
Sure.
We wound up, on our consent agenda, we had several things. We have an agreement with Eddy County regarding some funding and services that we provide. It's a yearly thing. That was obviously had been approved by the commission. We approved it last night by the council. We had some reappointments to the Commission on Aging, and then a new appointment of Devin Garcia to the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board. Very standard type of stuff. Chief Hope was really pleased. We actually have or had 4 people that were hired as trainees for the fire department. Hopefully we'll have 4 successful employees that graduate here in about 6 months and become firemen and paramedics. And so that's, my prayers are with them that they all complete the program, because I know it's a fairly rigorous training program, but it would be great to add some new folks into our staff out there. We also ratified some of the additional temporary positions out at the rec department, where they were hiring for some of the summer programs. They had, on the last agenda, they had several folks that we were hiring, but then they hadn't filled all the positions they needed. And so as a result, we asked last time for the ability to ratify if they were able to actually hire additional youth and folks to work in those rec programs, and we did that last night. Outside of that, the consent had a couple of training requests, which were just normal stuff. And then we actually had a recommendation from the Lodgers Tax Group on a bunch of expenditures out of Lodgers Tax. And of course, Lodgers Tax is very restrictive as to the type of things that it can be spent on. It's got to be basically promotional type of items for events and stuff in your community. But anyway, they had approved a lot of different upcoming events for support through the Lodgers Tax, and a couple of them they had actually tabled and are seeking more information before making a recommendation, either favorably or unfavorably. But the ones that they had approved, council adopted on the consent agenda. So it went pretty smooth. We wound up in the regular session. There were nothing exciting in our committee reports. We had personnel, police and fire that basically gave stats, answered questions from the counselors, but nothing too earth-shattering in any of those reports. And then when we got to community development, probably the highlight of the evening was discussion about the budget for the aquatic center, but then really just getting a better feel for exactly what's going on at this point with the summer aquatic program and all. And Lowell from the Aquatic Center was there to answer questions. And I mean, he does a great job. He and Stephanie out there as leadership. Obviously, they work for a contractor that, provides the services of running that facility for the city. But really bright young guy, very energetic, and does a great job. And the budget was approved by the council, but then his update about, they're basically running like a 2-session deal, late morning and then afternoon type of thing, limiting it to, I believe, like 140 people in the outdoor section at any particular time. And it's a thing where, they have had, I think, on Sunday afternoon, they had like 500 people lined up. So unfortunately, they were not able to accommodate a lot of the folks who wanted to actually be in the pool that day. And with the summer heat, this is the perfect time to go utilize the facilities. But
now, are the numbers set that way because of the health restrictions from the state?
Yeah, the health orders, and we keep hoping that they will, become more and more lax, or alter those to allow more and more. But at 140 folks inside, it's a pretty good crowd. In fact, I passed by there yesterday around noontime going to lunch, and there were like 8 to 10 kids standing at the top of the slides waiting to go down. Whereas if they opened it up to everybody, they would be lined up all the way down to the bottom and taking one step at a time.
Yeah.
And really the beauty, if we can ever get away from, to where it's open more full-time without the restrictions, the beauty of it was in years past, I know my wife, when she was babysitting the grandkids, she would take them as soon as they opened, because there was not as many folks there, and the kids were just constantly up and down the slides, up the stairs, down the slide, up the stairs, down the slide. After a couple hours, the kids were just exhausted. She'd take them and have lunch, and after that, they were just done for the afternoon.
That's a great babysitter.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a thing where it's a really wonderful facility, and hopefully we can accommodate as many folks as want to use it. But I know it's going to be, with the heat that we're having right now, that's the perfect place to try to take the kids and enjoy an afternoon. So
Sure. They get you to the end of you got a couple of other items there?
Yeah, we had some reports on projects with the infrastructure department, and they're always busy. I mean, between projects, and then there were some questions about the project with the refinery down on Freeman as to where all that stood. And so, Byron is one of those folks that he wears so many hats that it really is a challenge. In fact, I'm glad I don't have his job. When you're in charge of wastewater, water, sanitation, streets, parks, cemetery, it goes on and on.
Trying to keep track of everything.
In fact, almost everything that someone wants to complain about, you just refer them to infrastructure, because if it's an area that they're not happy with. Now, occasionally he does get to defer a few of the requests, because obviously if somebody's blocking an alley or something, it's code enforcement, which falls under community development. But Jesse there, working for Jim McGuire in that area, he does an absolutely great job. I mean, it's a thing where and it's the person that makes that job, because everybody can actually figure out what is required and what they need to do, but his approach seems to work well with people actually realizing that they need to fix the problem. He works with them to try to get them to fix the problem, and then if they don't fix the problem, he helps them force to be fixed the problem. But in the way he handles it,
in the nicest possible way.
Well, he does. And it's a thing where people actually, when they're forced, they knew that they needed to fix the problem, and he gave them as much rope as they requested to try to get it done. And when they don't hold it against him, because, he tried to work with them, but they just didn't get it done. So, but no, it's assets like that are hard to find, and that area is one that you can either have someone who's very successful at their job, or you can have one that everybody complains about. So he does a great job, because in the last few months, the only person who said anything to me about his job actually complimented him for helping him work through a problem they had at their property, which, that's a great thing.
That's a good thing. Speaking of those construction projects, now last year, the city was able to buy the property on the north side of town that used to have, I think it was Halliburton had a facility up there. Has that fully been implemented yet, or are they still working on? No,
they're completely moved in. In fact, if you're looking for infrastructure, that's where you need to go at this point, because that's where their offices are. That's where our mechanics and garage is now located, and it is really a nice facility. In fact, compared to our old, the mechanics have more space and ability to do things than they ever dreamed of. But I mean, our warehouse area up there for parts for the water department stuff are just, it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And the old facility, that was on Roselawn, near the Roselawn School.
Right.
What has the city thought about what they want to do with that property?
They're beginning to actually do some tear down of some of the old structures that needed to be, and clean up of the area as we have time and personnel. Of course, it winds up being a thing where with our hiring freeze, most of our departments are kind of short-staffed. But yeah, they're beginning to work on that, and at some point, it's one of those things where the city is in the process of doing some rezoning and stuff so that folks could actually, that could be used for commercial if someone decides that they have an idea that would actually make a good use for that facility. It can be bought from the city for private enterprise, which it's a thing where it's nice to have city property, but it's a thing where it's a lot better if somebody else can find a reason to put it back into private use for economic development in the area.
They put it in private use. They pay property taxes on it. If it's an employer, they hire people to work there, which generates employment, and so there's all those good things that happen from putting property back into production as opposed to just hoarding it.
Yeah, and it's a thing where obviously someone could go in and demolish the remainder, or they might actually use it as a diesel shop or something because of the fact of the way it was set up and what's there. So
yeah, that's good.
It has some opportunities.
It does. I'm going to take a quick break.
Sure.
There's a couple more things we'll want to talk about with the mayor, so don't go away. We'll be right back here on Good Morning Artesia.
Now for a